So we're going to go ahead and call the meeting. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Do we have any updates to the agenda?
I do not. How about that?
Nice.
Moving on to public comment.
That would be me.
Yes, that would be
Give
you.
the public.
Yeah. All right. So I'm here representing the Brighton Snowmobile Club. And I guess over the years, as far as people getting access from their home or the renters getting access from their home to reach the trail, was kind of like a given. And then as things, I'm not going to say a complaint, but a situation would come up, then we started making a list of roads that were open. And now we're finding it's almost every week or 2 weeks, something else comes up and we're missing a road that we have to add. So my first suggestion would be, except for the four-way intersection down here, that we just open all the town roads. That was my first suggestion.
They're pretty much all open now anyways.
So,
Again, you could probably say that people are riding them all, but technically they're not listed on the sheet as individual, or is it easier just to open them, except for the exception down here at the four-way,
Yep.
and call it a day?
Well,
but that does not include it's not just the four-way, it's also the state highways that we can't.
Right.
well, that's
State highways,
Yeah.
we're not concerned about that.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, that's a separate issue with the state.
That's the state.
Does anyone have any questions before I start? A couple questions.
What would be the downside to doing something like this?
I don't see any downsides. They're gonna use it anyways. Well, I think it's because the sheriff or they're not really sure, if
Roads are open.
what's open, and if it is open, it's like, well, why are you on the street? Well, it says their only access to the trail.
It's
Like
very
I'm going to give
difficult to enforce.
an example. Lake Street, right? So Lake Street, you have snowmobilers there, but in order to get on the trail, they have to go a little bit on the road. So,
And that's one of the examples that I said that, I mean, over the years, it was almost an unofficial given that anybody in town could, go down their road and get onto the main trail. And Gary and Phyllis Ming used to live there, I mean, forever, involved with it, but their Lake Street somehow never ended up getting
That's
on the
right.
street.
it was,
So, I have gone ahead and I spoke to Nick, our road foreman, just to get his input. And his input is that if we were to go ahead and do this, he would want to make it very clear in how we wrote it that it was for the purpose of accessing trails. And that the snowmobiles and generally they do anyway, they have to stay to the right-hand side and off the sidewalks, which is all
they do that anyways.
common sense. And I did reach out to the game wardens and they said, yes, it was an issue of enforcement. It becomes very difficult to enforce anything when it's wishy-washy, and both Nick and the law enforcement that I spoke to said that would make their roles easier in terms of, well, Nick didn't say his role would be easier, but he said it wouldn't create an additional burden because it's the edges. And that's the information that I have. I mean, I look at the list and everything, it looks like it's all open except for maybe the one or two streets that weren't named.
Which are pretty much access.
Yeah.
A lot of these are access.
But I mean, for traffic purposes, you're just, you're just looking at the individuals that live on that street.
Mhm.
It's not,
Right.
Right, it's not a,
yeah, it's not.
It's not me taking my snowmobile to go visit you. It's me
That's what
taking my
they're gonna do.
snowmobile.
I mean, they do already,
yeah,
but that
of
is what
course,
they're
they're
gonna
gonna
do.
do that. It's not part of the trail system where you're gonna just go up there because you want to get to Newport.
Yeah.
You know, it's just to get to the residents, I guess.
I would like to put one thing out there that if you guys are going to approve this, I would only approve it to the end of this season. Because this should really, because you're opening all the roads in town, that should have been a warned thing on the agenda for tonight. So by it just coming up as public comment and you guys acting on it, it's real, you know, people in town aren't getting the chance to have a say into it because they didn't know that it was coming up. So, I mean, but we're really close to the end of the season. So, you know, I don't know that if you're wanting to try it, I mean, I wouldn't oppose it for this particular time, but I would not extend it beyond this season because you need to have it where the people in town do have the ability to come in and have a comment on that. You know, it should have been called in to me ahead of time that we would like to be on the agenda to bring this to the board. Bringing it up as part of public comment is not really, the board shouldn't be acting on major issues like this without the public being notified. So, I mean, that's going to be my suggestion to you as your town manager is if you're going to approve it, it's short term. It's the end of this season only. And beyond that, it has to come back up for a vote.
And I will say that I did get a phone call, but it was after the agenda had been posted. So, I mean, we could have posted and modified. I wasn't aware that that was a problem. So I will take fault for that.
What is always, I mean, it's always with any, and it's not just this issue, it's any major issue that comes up, especially if it just comes up as public comment, unless there's really a compelling reason for the board to act upon it. If it affects all the voters in town, it should be on the agenda, you know, so that people know that this is coming up. If I want to have a say, I can come in and have a say. When you kind of do this, it's really not appropriate. So,
All right, well, then I'll make a motion that we open up all the roads for the remainder of the snowmobile season
For the purpose of accessing trails.
for purpose of accessing trails.
yes.
I'll second that.
And, I would also suggest that if there are issues that the board reserves the right to.
I was gonna say,
Shut that
I say
back
I
off.
would like to modify
that
that,
would
say that
definitely
we
be-
reserve the right to revoke.
Yeah.
So
Because
the
that does
current,
put a little teeth to the snowmobile club has to have some skin in this. You know, you're asking for every street in town to be opened up. If there's major issues, we're going to shut it right back down. It's no different than we had to do with the fire station. You know, I came down on them really hard when they came wanting access. And they did. They have done everything I've asked them to do. So it's no different with you guys. You know, if you're going to ask that all the streets be open, you're going to have to help police it. Because the town only gets 40 hours of police a week. We don't have unlimited policing capabilities to take care of the snowmobile club.
so
The snowmobile club is not a police department either. I mean, all we can do is put up signs, try to deal with complaints, but I mean, you know, we're not gonna
And that's
put,
just it. I that's what I expect. I do expect that there's, you know, when you say that the streets are open, that you're telling people explicitly for access to the trails only. If you're just going to put out there that all the streets are open, it's going to be a free for all, and we can't have that in town.
So the current motion that is on the floor is to open the roads in town for the purpose of accessing two snowmobiles, for the purpose of accessing the trails only, with the ability for the select board to revoke in the event of abuse. Do we have anyone in favor of this?
I already made the motion.
Okay, and that's what I'm asking. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you. And we'll do that up on the fancy form and send it to you guys.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Sarah up.
Yes, hold on. I need to add her as a co-host so she can share her screen. Hold on. Let's see here.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Sarah.
Hey,
Nice to
long
see
time
you.
no see.
So it sounds like you have snow up there too.
Oh, yeah.
Just a little.
Just a
Mhm.
little. It's kind of crazy how different it is across the state. I mean, I feel like we've got like 3 feet where I live. And then, 2 towns over where my dad is, he's like, wow, you guys have a lot of snow. We've got like 6 inches.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
weird.
That's because their snow's blowing off the mountains.
Yeah, actually you're exactly right. Yeah.
Not as much as in Truckee, though.
All right. Let's see. Let me see if this works. I think that works. Share. And you let me know if you can see that.
We can.
I
we
can see that.
You should probably put it in display, to.
If you put it in presentation mode, it'll be
Yeah.
easier. She
Where
got
do I go? Right here,
two
right?
monitors there.
I do.
No,
Yep.
no, you're gonna say you should have two options as a slideshow, the full slideshow. Go under slideshow.
Right up here.
Yeah. From the beginning.
There we go.
Now that should split out into two options on your screen, one of
Yep.
which is a full screen and one of which is this presentation that we're getting here. You may need to either switch them on your computer or you may need to unshare your screen and then reshare the other monitor.
All right. Is this showing
That is
That's it.
perfect.
full?
That's
Okay,
it.
great. Okay, good. Great.
I've never had to walk somebody through that before.
All right. Okay. So I think the goal here is for me to go through just some of the basics of labor relations. I know this isn't new to some of you. Jean, we went through this last year. Was it just last year?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Well, 24. The end
Okay.
of 24.
Okay. So for some of you, it may be a repeat, but it also may be just a good refresher and understanding of what you need to be aware of as the employer in this situation. Once you are in an environment where you have organized labor, you really have to be mindful of your role and what you can do. And the employees also, I think part of this a new aspect to unionizing is they also now have a representative and they have to abide by a contract. And, being in a unionized environment cuts both ways in terms of pros and cons. There is some predictability. You can enforce a contract, but there's also some accountability. So I don't have many slides here because I'm as a select board member myself, I know how late some of these meetings can go and I don't want to be the cause of a very late meeting. So I only have, I think 11 slides. And then from there, I mean, feel free to just ask questions as we go. And since I'm kind of looking at my screen, Heather, if you want to interrupt, or if any of you, I don't think any of you are quiet people. If you just want to shout, I'll gladly just stop and we can talk about the matter. All right. So without any further ado, it is not
I think
advancing.
you might just hit your space bar. Might be the best way to do it.
That's strange. There we go. Oh, no, it didn't change with you. Okay, let me.
You should be able to click right there on the screen. Unless your thing is not set to advance on.
Oh, there it is.
There we
There
go.
you
All
go.
right.
That itty bitty little thing at the bottom.
That's right. It was on that screen. Great. Perfect. All right, so a few things to know about municipal labor relations. There are several different laws, different acts in Vermont. There's a separate act for state labor relations, judicial labor relations. So the different ways that unions organize have different sets of rules. We're just talking about municipal ones tonight. So there is an act, a law that basically governs what you can do, what you must do, what your responsibilities are, and similarly, what the employees and the union can and can't do. And that's called the Municipal Labor Relations Act. If any of you want a copy of it, let me know. I'll send it to you, email it to you. It's not terribly long, but it does give you some insight into the guardrails around how this relationship works. Um, and in it describes the different rights of the employers. It talks about what happens when you have disputes, and when I say it protects the public interest, it limits in some cases when like strikes can happen. In the event of protecting public safety. It's overseen by the Vermont Labor Relations Board. So that's a key thing for you to know that when there are disputes, it goes up to the Vermont Labor Relations Board. From there, things can go to court, but they have the jurisdiction. They're the first stop. And that's just a group of people who sit as a board. They're not actual judges. They're appointees to the Labor Relations Board. So you may remember this or you may not, but you had a number of employees who were certified as a union 2 years ago. And there were three options before the town when they presented their petition. The town could either just voluntarily recognize and save them the hassle of an election. It could basically do nothing but comply with some information requests, and in which case the Labor Relations Board would come in and would actually conduct a little election. Or the law was changed not too long ago so that when employees brought forth their petitions, they also had their union cards, so they had to like join the union to start. The Vermont Labor Relations Board could count to see whether that majority, called card check, whether a majority of your employees in that certain grouping who submitted the petition, if that exceeded 50%. And as you're aware, you have a very, very small union. Right now, I think you have three. Okay. Yep, 3 members. Okay. So that's how you become a union. When you become a union, you have a bargaining unit. Right now, you have one bargaining unit, just one group of people that you bargain with. In other municipalities, there may be a number of bargaining units. You may have one for public safety or public works, highway, professional staff. But the Vermont Labor Relations Board really is the one who certifies how big that unit can be. And we take into consideration whether or not their roles, the roles of the employees are similar enough so that they really can be represented by a union. They have, their interests are similar enough in their job duties, their pay, things like that. So you have one bargaining unit. Elected officials, supervisors, and confidential employees can't be in that in the union. So if you had people who were elected officials or supervisors. Actually, I believe I don't know if that was the case with Brighton, but I know there was. Okay, yeah, I see you nodding. I think one of the supervisors did try to unionize and we objected and they conceded that was a supervisory position. So they were not made part of the union. An important key thing for you to know is that the union, once that bargaining unit is created, is the exclusive agent for all the employees in the bargaining unit. So that means that you can't, and employees sometimes begrudge this, but you can't go and just negotiate with individual employees. You have to negotiate with the union under this process so that everybody's considerations and everyone's interests are all represented by the union. And of
And
course,
that's, can I have you pause for a second, Sarah?
yeah,
And that's both ways. They also can't come to us and ask for something individually outside of their contract, correct?
that's right. And I think um, that can be the tricky part where if they come and say, I want a special carve out just for me, the employer can say, look, we abide by the contract. If you're seeking an amendment to the contract, go talk to your union steward or your union rep and have them contact me. And then we'll talk about whether or not we're open to an amendment, but that's correct. Yep. And of course, this whole process is really powered by this collective bargaining process that you're about to go through. And as I understand it from Mike, the contract ends June 30, and the
Correct.
union has already done their notification of their intent to negotiate. And you're now in the process of of scheduling and taking those initial steps to start that role, start the collective bargaining. So the legal role of the select board in this process in the municipal unions. So you are the employer. That's probably pretty evident. And the way that you act is you act as a body through, and in your case, you act as a body through your town manager because you have the town manager form of government. But that does mean that, I mean, you are the employer, so you still have to participate in the bargaining. You have to, bargain in good faith. And once you've come to an agreement, you've got to ratify and then fund. By statute, once you've ratified the agreement, you have to fund it. And sometimes that's important for select boards to know when you go in front of your electorate on town meeting day and people are wanting to start picking apart things that you've already bargained for. You don't have the discretion at that point um, to go back on anything that you've already agreed to. You have to make sure through your process that eventually you are funding that contract.
Can I ask you a quick question on that,
Yeah.
Sarah? And that is, so, the new contract is going to start July. Do we just set like any monetary things that they would start January 1 of the next year? Because I'm thinking, that they got a pay raise this January because that was part of the current contract. Because after town meeting day, we've passed the budget. There is no do-overs in the budget. So is that kind of how we deal with that?
Yeah, remind me what's your fiscal year?
We're calendar year.
Your calendar year. So,
Yeah.
that will be an important factor when you are bargaining as well, to understand that you do have that obligation to fund, but you do have some guardrails that the voters have already placed around you in terms of what you could agree to. Right? I mean, because that'll be from a timeline perspective, you already know the universe you have to play in.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's how that would kind of play out. Um, I think it used to be the case that there were a lot more, maybe I'm not seeing the news as I should, but I haven't seen in the news in the last like 10 or 15 years as many instances of impasse and having to go to arbitration. Rutland may have had to do it recently, but most towns are able to, and I think the unions as well are sort of identifying where everybody is from a financial perspective. So that's the good faith part of the obligation that extends to both sides. The collective bargaining process. So the first step is the red box. You've done your notification that you intend to bargain. I think you're now in the process of setting some meetings. You, as a select board, will have to designate a representative to the collective bargaining team. So I assume that might be some action that you'll be taking in the coming, days or weeks. And then once your team is set, they decide who represents them on their team. You have your first meeting. Typically, you have ground rules that you abide by, and ground rules are just things about recognizing who is part of the team, what would be permitted in terms of being able to participate remotely in bargaining meetings. Some of the meetings, um, you know, I've been in bargaining teams where it was really important that everyone wanted to be in the room together. And this was for a community right up at the Canadian border, something you're familiar with. And both sides had people who were traveling from afar, and there was a significant snowstorm. And both sides would have had an interest in wanting to let their representative participate in a hybrid way, but both sides had agreed that they wouldn't do hybrid meetings. And so they canceled the meeting, but that just dragged on negotiations longer and longer. So those are some of the things that you'll talk about. You'll also talk about things like when the meetings might be. I think this came up last time, Jean, where we recognized that their meetings were all during the workday and during your workday as well, if I recall, as an employer. And so we had suggested that maybe in the future, when we do this again, there might be some back and forth around maybe some meetings during the workday, maybe some meetings after the workday, so that people were feeling, that it was a little bit more fair. So those are things that you can talk about with ground rules. And then there's an exchange of information. So the town is in the position of having all the financial information. And usually the union will request, we want to see spreadsheets of, salaries and, information about the employees. I think they've already asked for some information.
Yeah,
Um,
they've already asked for all that.
yep. But they may ask for more about, what are the benefit, like how much does care cost per employee this year? So they get a good sense of how all the information and the different levers that they may want to touch upon during the negotiation. So they'll make those requests. You've got to honor them with, some sense of reasonableness. We do have an opportunity to, talk about exchange of information if it becomes really onerous. Um, and then you identify subjects of bargaining. The last time it took a little bit longer because we had to start a brand new contract. What I think might happen first is your team, your municipal team, will come together, and the 3 or 4 people, probably 3 people, will say, all right, from the town's perspective, we're not going to bother with these 18 sections because they're fine, but we do care about these other sections. Everyone's going to pick wages, healthcare, and maybe something related to the conditions of work. But there may be other things that are important to each side. And so you'll identify kind of what do you want to bargain. And that's usually the sort of first step of bargaining is you compare those lists, you agree to the scope, and then you agree what you're not going to address throughout the negotiation. And that just it makes it easy to set up what's going to happen and how many meetings you're going to need and how quickly you can come to resolution. Then you have a couple of, in this case, and hopefully maybe it's 2, 3 meetings, who knows? You negotiate in good faith, you exchange proposals. You'll probably set a deadline to say, we need to have all of your proposals in by such and such a date, and after such and such a time, we're not going to have any new proposals for any new topics to negotiate and stuff like that. So you that's all done through kind of a procedure in your rules, and that helps you to begin to narrow down and facilitates coming to an endpoint. Hopefully, you come to an endpoint pretty quickly. And what will likely happen if you have meetings in the interim is you may start putting on your select board meeting agenda an executive session, so for your representative to the negotiating board to kind of check in as you go. Or the person the chair may call at the request of the representative a special meeting for the select board, and it may be all entirely in executive session just so that you can kind of touch base on some of the topics being discussed and the options so that that representative is better informed about what the appetite is and the feelings are of the other board members, because by the time you're getting down to approval, you want to make sure you bring back to your team, to the board, something that they're going to ratify. So you come to conclusion, you shake hands, everyone, signs basically that they're tentatively signing off on agreement on the sections. And then both parties have to go back. The union takes a quick vote of their members, thumbs up, thumbs down. The select board, thumbs up, thumbs down. And when the second of the two give the second thumbs up, then it's considered ratified and you move to implementation. Any questions on that? Seems pretty reasonable. So the next two slides are things employers should do, and then the one after that is the employer don't. So these are things just to kind of keep in mind. So employer do, you have to bargain in good faith. There can be some consequences if it begins to appear through different circumstantial evidence that you're not bargaining in good faith and you're just stringing them along. You have to abide by the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, and you have to apply it consistently. So that's kind of back to your point, Heather. You do have a duty to apply it consistently. And if an employee asks you to treat them differently, you would not be complying with your duty to apply the contract consistently. You're required to have open communication, not open communication, but open communication or transparent communication with the union or the union steward is part of the expectations, things that you should do, particularly about any change in practice. Mike, for example, just did it tonight, and actually or yesterday. The change in practice can sometimes be spelled out in the contract about how you communicate on certain items like your seasonal schedule. And it sets some parameters that you agree upon. But if, for example, trying to think of something different that isn't really in the contract, but it would be a change, maybe that you want the employees to swing by the town office every day before, and check in here before reporting for duty. And if that's not really in the contract, a good thing to do would just to be really open about that and to have that communication so that it doesn't appear like you're trying to change their work conditions in bad faith. So it doesn't mean that there's a reasonableness test to this. So these are things to keep in mind. If it's a change in practice that hasn't been done before, just communicate about it. Doesn't mean you can't do it, just means you should keep communicating about it. Train supervisors. So make sure the people who are supervising your employees who are a part of the bargaining unit understand the contract and understand so that they can apply it consistently and they can respond consistently when employees, before a grievance is lodged, your supervisor should be able to spot a problem. And I think you've got a pretty good, as I understand, I think you're good on that, right, Mike? Like you and your supervisor have a pretty tight communication. He can confer with you.
Yeah, it's all been. I mean, it's been working fine. We've actually been doing. Nick has been great with the staff, and so
okay.
Yeah, no real issues there.
Good. I don't see any issues with nothing for Brighton. Kind of jumps out to me. I think you're doing everything right here. Sharing relevant information. I know they've asked you for employee data that you're required to give. You provided it, so good for you for doing that. The things that can cause unfair labor practices, and actually I'm going to jump ahead one slide so you know what I mean by an unfair labor practice. An unfair labor practice is basically something that either side can complain or allege to the Vermont Labor Relations Board to say that the other side violated a duty or did something wrong. The Vermont Labor Relations Board then goes through an informal and then a formal process to decide whether an unfair labor practice did indeed happen. They can then issue cease and desist orders. They can order you, if you're found to have violated some provision, to reinstate an employee if you didn't dismiss them according to the contract and the terms of the contract, institute back pay. And that can be appealed, and that's when you can land in court. So you have to sort of go through this unfair labor practice piece first. So you really do want to avoid that. There's litigation, there's costs associated with that. So, do try to pay attention to this slide, the employer don'ts. So don't discriminate against employees. Don't try to dominate them. Don't try to coerce them. Again, I don't see anyone doing any of that in Brighton. Don't try to bypass the union and deal directly with employees about any of the mandatory subjects. Don't make unilateral changes to pay, their schedules, benefits, job duties, or discipline systems. Those are all sort of the core subjects of negotiation. So you would make that not unilaterally, but through a collectively bargained atmosphere. Don't surveil employees or retaliate against them for engaging in protected or concerted activity. So, for example, if they are, if it's clear that in the parking lot, employees are kind of gathering around and they're talking about wanting to unionize or change unions or decertify or take actions to dissolve their union, do not be neutral. Do not surveil them. Don't do anything that you if they were talking about what they're going to do on Friday night, treat the group of them being together, having conversation the same as treat any protected conversation the same as though they were talking about a topic that was like their after work plans. So it's really important because employers sometimes can, by instinct, maybe feel like they need to get defensive and stop employees from talking or organizing. And you say, well, there's no more gathering in the parking lot, or you must report home immediately. Don't do that. That could be retaliation for them engaging in sort of protective activity. And obviously don't discipline inconsistently with any of if there's a contractual requirement for you to find just cause for an employee, you have to just discipline according to the contract in the progressive. I think in Brighton, you have a progressive discipline process anyway. So you just remain consistent with that process. All right. We talked about the consequences of an unfair labor practice, which is if you do any of those don'ts. And from time to time, this does happen. Unions are dissolved or they change. Right now, your bargaining, AFSCME is the union that represents your employees. In other communities, it may be a different union, that the IBEW, for example, that might represent employees. Doesn't have to be AFSCME. So sometimes employees themselves will become dissatisfied with their representation, or they'll be dissatisfied with being represented at all. And they have a process that they can go through to dissolve or change that. And so I'll just walk through the 4 steps just so that you're aware of them. The most important thing I think for you to know is that it's the employees that have to initiate this action. They are the ones, if they want to change or they want to dissolve, they need to be the ones without any involvement from the employer to go to the Vermont Labor Relations Board and their website. There's resources there. They can go there and do their business. If they come to you, Mike, or to any of you as select board members and say, hey, what do we do? You are not their HR department to help advise them, and you should not on any of those decisions. Because if the select board or the management assist with this process, it can be interpreted very negatively. And I'll show you that on the next slide. But anyway,
Can I
when
ask-
they,
So,
Yep.
so can our answer just be to refer them to the Vermont Labor Relations Board and ask them that question? That we
say
have
that
nothing
again?
to do with it? I said, would we be able just to tell them to contact the Vermont Labor Relations Board and discuss it with them that we have nothing to do
Yes.
with that? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the appropriate response.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Because I
they're,
don't like to stand there and go, I can't tell you, that's kind of
yeah,
not a
yeah,
nice thing to do for
exactly.
your staff
Yeah,
either, but
yep. Have them,
these are the people that could help you. You call
yep.
them.
The Labor Relations Board, they have a website, they have a section about how to unionize. It has the forms. If they wanted to change unions, it has that information there. If they wanted to dissolve or decertify, they can call the staff there. And I would guess that the staff there also would be really reluctant to kind of walk through the they're probably very careful not to like prefer one union to another, but they probably they're practiced in giving very neutral advice. But in this case of dissolving or changing, you again have to have the 51% support. So it can't be just one employee is upset or dissatisfied or the result of the contract isn't to their particular liking and they're like I want out. They may be able to get out of the union and that's a decision they can make, but they can't cause the contract to go away. That has to go through the decertification process. So you need 51% support. And there are other limitations on how often and when this can happen. You haven't had an election in 12 months. Your union was certified much longer than that. So the time period for that has passed. That's not a consideration in Brighton. But if you were to change, if employees were to go and change to a different union now, um, they would have to wait 12 months if they were dissatisfied with that and wanted to go back because that protects you as an employer from having to go yo-yo with these cycles of bargaining. So here's what happens just to kind of really drill down on the consequences of employer interference is you could get yourselves a unfair labor practice finding from the Vermont Labor Relations Board. They could, issue a ULP. And even just a little bit of employer assistance can void the process. So, Mike, I would certainly, point people in that direction, but I wouldn't necessarily say, here's my phone.
Yeah,
Or,
no.
like,
I can give
hey,
them
during your
I give
break.
them the name of the organization. They
Yeah.
can look it up on their own.
Yeah. And they should be doing this on their own time. You need to be very neutral in this respect because even just a little bit of interference, if they were to be successful and the employees were to go forward and get 51%, the union may say there was taint and there was a climate of coercion or there was some employer assistance there and they could go right to the labor relations board and that could invalidate the whole effort. So that's a serious consideration. And then if that happens then you've got you're in a little bit of like the litigation world and you've got to pay for that and you've got relational costs because you're still going to be bargaining with the same union and that's not going to feel very good. And it just means a lot more difficulty keeping things going cleanly. So final takeaways are build good relationships, be collaborative, work in good faith, be transparent, make sure you provide the fund. Once you've agreed to the funds, make sure you provide the funds and definitely stay neutral when employees unionize. They attempt to certify a union or they attempt decertification. Um, those are the big takeaways, I think. Questions, comments? Was that too high level? Were you looking for more detail?
I think that gets
No,
us
I think that gives me at least a good starting point. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Would you send us laws on that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep. Actually, Mike, I've emailed you the PDF if you want to print those out or have
Yes.
someone print those out to them. Sure thing. And if you have any questions, feel free through Mike or, to me directly if you just want to ask a question. It's like, I don't want to get in trouble, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer these questions. I know it can be a little scary because of all these grievances and unfair labor practices, and sometimes you really don't mean to do things. But that's why we thought it'd be better to sort of get out in front and just at least make you aware of the landscape and what your rights are as well in terms of enforcing the contract. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
Sarah.
Thank you.
Stay
Okay.
warm.
Actually, it's pretty warm right
Yeah,
now.
I know. I could tell her your tank top.
God.
Okay. So next up is the 10-mile square bridge and FEMA update.
Yeah, we got good news all around. So the 10-mile square bridge is out to bid. It went out to bid last Friday. So I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about that in executive session because there's some contract stuff I wanted to go over with you, but it can't be because it's out for bid. We can't discuss it in public session. But that project will you'll be opening the bids at your March 4th meeting. Not Eugene, not you, Bruce.
Darn.
But so we'll be awarding the contract then, and then when I was talking to the engineer, he expects by late summer the bridge will be replaced. It's not a ginormous job, so it's a couple weeks worth of work. So that is moving along. FEMA, we have received about $400,000 worth of our reimbursements from the flooding stuff. And there's more to come yet. I just got today the state portion on the December flooding from 23, but they didn't give us the right amount. So I sent it back to them and said, I think you're wrong. They gave us 7.5%, and I believe we get 12.5% because we have all the requirements for the higher reimbursement amount. So that should be coming, but we're moving along on the FEMA front. We actually closed out the first flooding in July of 2024. That one's all done. All the reimbursements are in. We haven't got all the money yet, but it's all in, and they've approved everything. And most of the second flood we have gotten approved. We have the bridge as part of that, is one part that's not, and then they pulled out 3 of our culverts that were replaced. And we did not get state certification on those culverts when they were replaced, that they were, what we put in is flood resilient for the next 100 years. So they've been pulled out. They gave us some engineering money, and I've already worked with the state on requesting hydrology studies on those 3 culverts to see if what we put in will hold, if that's good enough, or if we're going to have to go back and redo those. So more to come on that.
Fun times. So next up, we have the overweight permits. We've received 2 overweight permit applications, one for Dirt Tech Company LLC and one for Phoenix Feed and Nutrition. We have all the documents and they've been reviewed by the road foreman. So we just need a motion to.
I'll make a
have them
motion
signed.
that Heather sign the overweight permits.
And a second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sign. Anyone opposed to me signing them? Good. I'm just going to sign them. It would be the 18th, correct?
Yes, correct.
And then we have our pay orders.
They're circulating.
Whoa. Stay at 2027.
Whoa.
She's moving us right along here.
You can tell I don't work on stuff that's today.
Mm.
I'm either 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years in advance.
It's funny, this is the first year where I've actually not written 2025 on anything. Normally I'm like a year behind for the first 3 months, and this year it's like 26 just stuck. That's been an easy one.
I'm usually a year ahead by time July rolls around. Okay, and then
Let me make a motion. Did everybody, well, no, I guess. That's it.
say it.
Oh, yeah.
Did everybody get their minutes from our prior meeting?
Yes, I
Yes,
did. I got
okay.
it.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
And a second,
Second that.
all in favor?
Right.
Opposed?
Mm,
We have any other business to discuss? Do you have other business?
Yeah.
That's it.
And that, all right.
I guess I will go do a quick, we're going to be running a fundraiser for the 4th of July weekend. So I've been contacted, and Heather was contacted by the American Legion, and because it's the 250th anniversary, they want a weekend of events. Which we don't have a budget for, we have no money. So they've agreed to help us raise the funds to make it happen. So
Well, not the whole group, but they have said, work with us, so we're setting it up.
yes, so I'm moving forward with it. I've got 2 bands that I actually have one already scheduled for Sunday night of the fireworks, and I believe the other one will be set. I just have to email in tonight because I just got the other band confirmed. I'm planning right now just on the pavilion. I have reached out. The Sunday night band asked if we could get the stage. They may reduce their fee in order for us to be able to afford it. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna see. I don't know if it's available. And so I reached out to Catamount to see if it's available because I normally have that book 6 months ago, but I haven't heard back from them yet. So more on that to come. But so once I get the fundraising stuff put out there, I will certainly ask for your help in pushing that because even with cheaper bands and everything, we're looking at somewhere in the $10,000 range to put on concerts and ambulance and all of that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a big fundraising effort to get that in before July. So that's my pitch. I just thought the select board should know about it because we're kind of moving ahead with it.
And here's my pitch. We're gonna be fishing soon.
Mhm.
Fishing tournament is, I think, a week and a half away. Week and a half. Kind of nuts. Chaos.
The other thing I would I just wanted to let you guys know. So when I'm there next week, I ordered the bridge equipment to actually set up a wireless bridge between town hall and the depot for the sheriff's department. So we can eliminate that phone line over there that we're paying an unholy amount of money for with the crappy internet. Because we're spending a lot. It's like $140 a month for that over there. And to me, that's just ridiculous. We have internet in the town hall. We can bounce it over there. So when you see me out there, putting things on Windows and making things connect to each other, that's what we're doing.
Okay. Give me a folder to put these in. I'm on our desk.
This is where I have to see myself out.
Yes.
Yeah, we're
Thank you, guys.
about, well, once I sign that, then we can officially start our executive session.
Well, see,
Have a good
tell
day.
me.
Yeah. Thank you.
What's the approximate funds needed for?
roughly $10,000, $15,000. Our old ones
That
were probably
include food?
20,000.
No,
That's
fireworks was 20, right?
Fireworks were
Fireworks is
15,000 alone.
20.
20.
I mean, we have spent in the last, probably 5 years, every year has been right around between 40 and 60. I mean, depending upon the band. We don't have nearly as expensive a band. We can't even touch them. But I mean, these people, the people that we're getting are one has local connection, the other one is a local band. So their fees are less. But there is a cost because like I had not paid for our licensing because all these bands they perform everybody's songs, but as the host of the event we're required to make sure that we're paying the licensing fees for those songs, and so that's $1,000 a year that we spend to pay the two licensing entities. And we've done that all these years because in the olden days, we didn't do that. Well, towns got caught and the fines for not paying it are huge. They're $10,000, $15,000 for using somebody's music without paying them for it. So VLCT set up a program through the licensing agencies. So it's about $500 for each of the two big ones. And we get a municipal rate. So the forum always paid for it, but it was in the town's name. Because the town got to buy the cheaper one. If it was the forum buying it, we had to pay per person that was there. And for one thing, we had no idea of knowing how many people were there.
Okay.
Are you pushing me along? Are you?
Yep.
Yes, we're moving along to
Executive.
our first executive session. We need two, correct?
No, they can both be
No,
one. They're
one?
both contract. They're both
Okay.
contract discussions. So
Okay.
So I'll make a motion, we go into executive session for contract negotiations with the select board and Mike.
Under the provisions of.
Oh, that's right. I gotta do all that.
you have to give all that crap.
Under the provisions of Title I, Section 313 of the Vermont statutes, finding that premature public knowledge would substantially disadvantage the town. No decisions are expected following the executive session.
And a second.
Second it.
All in favor of going in?
Aye.
Who wants to shut the door?
You want me to,
I'm ready. You want to make a motion?
give me the thing, because obviously. I make a motion to exit executive session.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
We've exited executive session at 6:46 PM. No action has been taken. Take a motion to adjourn the meeting
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
and a second.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we can go home now.
Can we have these books in?
Yeah, you